Councilwoman.
Hey, sir, how are you?
I'm doing. Councilman.
You doing, sir?
And Counselor.
Glad to see y'all. Can't wait. Get started.
Mr. Plain didn't think I was referring to her when I said Counselor.
I got it. It took me a second, but I got
Yes,
And Mr. Chair. How are
sir.
you?
Hope everybody had a pleasant day.
Not too bad, Mr. Chair.
Just remember what Grandma always told me. It could be worse.
Sage advice. Sage advice.
Mr. Walker, you're still in your office as well?
Home office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, home office. But this room actually gets hot rather quickly. So sweater may come off here shortly.
Well, I am in the county office for the first time, and my shawl may go on quickly.
Oh. Well, had I known that, I would have joined you at 2020 Hampton.
Yes, sir. I called you earlier, but it's like.
Yeah, I received your call, and I had a lot going on today. I tried to call you back shortly before the meeting, but you and I can wrap afterwards.
Okay, that'll work.
You all have high hopes for this meeting that you're going to have time after to talk.
Well, after could be tomorrow.
That's a good one.
Mr. Rachel, they really don't know, huh?
That was well timed.
6 o'clock.
6:02.
You know, my time is a little slow here, I tell you. Let me go ahead and call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask Ms. Only for the roll call.
Yes, sir. Malinowski.
Here.
Pugh.
Here.
McBride.
Here.
Livingston.
Here.
Horatio.
Here.
Joe Walker. Barron.
Here.
Overture Walker.
Here.
English.
Here.
Newton.
Present.
Mackey.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. That brings us to our invocation and pledge allegiance. That's going to be done by the Honorable Shakese Newton. Ms. Newton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues and those citizens of Richland County who are watching our meeting today. I woke up this morning and was reflecting on the theme of gratitude on this day, and wanted to share a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson related to gratitude. And that is, cultivate the habit of being grateful for every good thing that comes to you, and give thanks continuously. And because all things have contributed to your advancement, you should include all things in your gratitude. as such, I include you all in my gratitude and the citizens of Richland County who I am lucky to serve. I'm going to stand here for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me if you are so inclined and able. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Councilman Newton. That brings us to presentations. Item 4A on our agenda. We do have one presentation, and that is from the Comet. We'll get some highlights regarding what's happened with our Comet bus system. And we have Mr. John Ando. Mr. Ando, are you ready for your presentation?
Yes, I am, sir.
You have the floor and you may proceed.
May I share my screen?
Yes, please.
All right, good afternoon, members of the Richland County Council. My name is John Ando, Executive Director of the Comet. Just wanted to give you a brief update of some of the activities going on at the Comet and answer any questions that you may have. For those, I know there's several new members of Richland County Council, so we are officially known as the Central Midlands Regional Transit Authority. We are a regional transportation authority under state law created by Richland County, Lexington County, City of Columbia, and City of Forest Acres. And we provide public transportation services throughout Richland and Lexington counties. 34 fixed routes, 10 university shuttle routes, 5 reflex routes, a van pool program, subsidy program with Lyft and Uber for nighttime transportation and transportation to the grocery store, volunteer transportation and subsidized transportation for seniors and persons with disabilities, 8 bike share stations, and a ADA complimentary paratransit service. We transport about 2.8 million passenger trips a year on a fleet of 89 buses, trolleys, and vans. Some of our highlights that we've achieved in the last year is that we've expanded our opportunity for people to get public information at the Comet throughout our service area. We've expanded nighttime transportation, and people can now get transit until 3 a.m. in the morning through our partnerships with Lyft and Uber. We pay the first $8 of that trip. We've created door-to-door services in Denny Terrace and in Hopkins. We formed new partnerships with various school districts throughout Richland County, as well as various colleges and universities in Richland and Lexington counties. We've started a van pool program for commuters that want to connect to employment sites throughout our service area. We help low-income residents that live in food desert areas to get connected to grocery stores through Lyft and Uber. We pay the first $8 of that trip, and somebody can use that program 2 times a week. We have contracts with Richland County Sheriff and City of Columbia Police to patrol our buses, bus stops, and Comet Central and downtown. We've been adding bus shelters throughout the service area, and our goal is to get to 175 additional shelters by next year. We've added libraries on our buses in partnership with Richland Library to help promote literacy. We've just launched transportation programs for seniors and persons with disabilities throughout our service area. Whether they use a volunteer driver, we'll reimburse up to 100 miles per month, or a taxi program where we'll pay $50 a month for use for any trip purpose. We've constructed more bike share stations in downtown Columbia, and Comet riders can ride Blue Bike for free. We created Comet Academy to teach people how to use the Comet system. We're continuing to examine cleaner vehicles. We've converted the fleet to biodiesel. We have propane buses, and we are getting ready to implement a hydrogen bus and a battery electric bus. And then, as I mentioned, our goal is to build up to have 15% of our bus stops covered with some form of a shelter for our passengers. Quick highlight on our funding. We have close to a $30 million budget. 63% of our funding comes from Richland County. We also, the penny. We also get funding from the Federal Transit Administration, Lexington County, business partnerships, fair revenue, selling advertisements on our buses, and other miscellaneous revenues that we generate as part of the transit system. We are planning for the future. We've launched a program called Reimagine the Comet, and this is our opportunity to study how we provide public transit services in Richland and Lexington counties. The last time we reviewed the route network was in 2009, and the current network has been based off of the former streetcar lines of the Broad Street Power Company going back to the late 1800s. This effort is given a comprehensive look on how can we provide public transit differently to match today's demographic groups in Richland and Lexington counties. We are in the phase where we're getting ready to present some concepts to the Comet Board of Directors. We've had public outreach. We've studied the ridership patterns and looking at providing a final recommendation. This map here shows you the existing transit network, as you see throughout Richland and Lexington counties. This network shows if we continue to provide a coverage type of a transit system, how a conceptual route network would look like. The ultimate goal with this effort is to provide coverage throughout our service area, but also increased frequency on the busier routes in our service area, like North Main, Faro, Divine, Gardner's Ferry, Two Notch, Forest, and Broad River. This concept here shifts a lot of the priorities to more frequency. So instead of having 30-minute and 60-minute service in our service area, we would start to have 15-minute service on the major thoroughfares and 30 or 60 in other areas, but it also would shrink the level of service that we provide in our service area. We would still continue to maintain lifeline services like those flex routes that we have in Hopkins, Gadsden, Eastover, and Batesburg, Leesville, but it's going to focus our efforts more on productivity versus coverage. This just gives you an idea of some of the Comet services that we have in our brand. And if there are any questions on the Comet, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? My colleagues have any questions?
Mr. Chair, I have one question.
You recognize?
Yes. Mr. Ando, can you just share a little bit about how COVID has impacted any of your routes or service delivery?
Yes, COVID tremendously affected us. We did reduce the transit system back in March of 2020 because we had a significant ridership decline. We were about 45% of our normal ridership pre-pandemic. Over time, the ridership has come back. We're about 25% from pre-pandemic levels. We just recently implemented a service change where we added some service, but we still held the line with a lot of the reductions that were made back in March. And we figured that we would rebuild the transit system as the ridership grows. And that would be taken into consideration in our Reimagine the Comet effort. We are cleaning the buses daily. We're detailing the buses weekly. We're power washing all of the bus shelters and benches on a weekly basis. Our drivers and passengers are required to wear masks when in Comet facilities or on Comet buses. If you don't have a mask, we won't transport you. We're only promoting the transit system for essential travel only until everybody can get vaccinated. And we're not allowing standees on the buses. We just launched a program called Get Your Shot, and we're promoting free transportation to vaccination sites throughout the Comet service area, utilizing either Comet buses, DART paratransit, our pickup program, or our volunteer transportation program. We're encouraging seniors to take advantage of the program since that's the phase that we're in right now. And as we go along the various phases, we'll continue to promote that program to the other groups. We also do COVID testing at Comet offices for the employees every other week. And we have a testing facility at Comet Central downtown for the Comet passengers Wednesday through Saturday. And we're partnering with DHEC so we can help register those Comet riders that don't have access to a computer to be able to register to get the vaccination and give them transportation information at the same time.
Thank you. I have Ms. Barron, then
Thank you.
Ms. Newton, then Ms. P. Mr. P, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, sir, for this presentation. Just a question. I attended a virtual workshop where we were redrawing bus lines and things of that nature. At what point are we looking to implement some of those findings that you had during those sessions?
So the board of directors, based on those concepts that I showed previously, the board is going to be reviewing those concepts at its March meeting and giving staff direction to our consultant on where to finalize. And it's going to be based on a percentage. How much percent should be coverage versus ridership? Once we have that direction from the board, we'll then create a new map, and we'll do another round of public outreach to show the direction that the board has passed. And then once we gather that public feedback, we'll present it to the board one last time. And upon board approval, we'll start to launch. Our goal is to have this program implemented by fall of 2021.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think I said Walker, Pugh, and then Newton.
Chair, I think you
Ms.
said.
Walker? Ms. Pugh, go ahead.
Sir, I think you said Ms. Newton and then Mr. Pugh.
Oh, okay. I'm going backwards here. Newton, Pugh, then Walker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Pugh, and thank you, Mr. Ando. Certainly, it's been an interesting process to watch how you're planning the bus routes. One question that I have that I know a lot of my constituents have, if you could quickly address how the Comet, either in general or as part of this process, goes about evaluating bus shelters and bus seating for stops along the route, particularly. It's a concern in general, and particularly as we're dealing with COVID and trying to have people who are physically distant yet remaining safe at the bus stop. And as part of that, if you could also address what the cost is for some of those shelters, I think it might surprise people to know. So what the general plans are, either in general or as part of this process regarding shelters and how those costs play out.
So the board has passed a policy that discusses how we site bus shelters, bus benches, and transit amenities throughout our service area. And when we're considering adding these amenities, we look at the number of boardings that occurs at that bus stop location. And if it meets the threshold within that policy, then it gets placed on a list for evaluation, right-of-way access, and permission from whoever owns the right-of-way to construct that shelter. As it relates to the pandemic levels, we're still taking that into consideration. The new shelter design is more open air, so it allows for more opportunity for people to stand and be socially distanced. And we also have put what they're called vagrants bars, but they're really separators to allow people to separate when they're sitting on the benches. As part of the 175 shelters that we're installing, we've applied that standard, and there are some cases where just due to either neighborhood concerns or right-of-way issues, we've had to forego placing a shelter at those locations pending a future review at a later date. You mind tell me your last question? I apologize. I think I missed that.
Just cost.
Cost, thank you. Cost for a shelter can range from as little as $15,000 to as much as $38,000. We have grants from Federal Transit Administration as well as the Penny to help cover this. And we're also pursuing CTC funding, County Transportation Committee funding, to help with the sidewalks and the padding for those locations.
Thank you, Mr. Ando. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Pugh and then Mr. Overton Walker.
No, thank you for that outstanding presentation. Ms. Newton kind of covered my question when she asked about the shelters because, as you know, my district stretches from one end of the county almost to the other. And on our Broad River side, a lot of my constituents had questions about the shelter part. So I guess I'll ask my second question. The second question was, in the Reimagine the Comet, are you guys reconsidering bringing those stops back, like per se the Blythewood stop that you had out at the Doco Manor, and when COVID hit, you guys had to do away with those stops. A lot of people are still asking about whether or not we will be having public transportation back in that area.
Well, when we had the 52X, it had extremely low ridership, and we worked with the town to see if we could get their assistance in increasing that ridership. The town actually declined the transit service after seeing a year and a half of performance and asked that we remove the service, which is why we have not provided service to Blythewood since. To this date, we have not heard of any requests from the Blythewood community wanting transit. However, we are evaluating alternative service delivery methods, such as flexible routes that we're doing in like the lower Richland area and in the Batesburg-Leesville area. So we could consider some type of flexible transportation in the Blythewood extreme northeastern portion of Richland County, like Lake Carolina, for instance, as well. And perhaps we could work with your office on how we can engage the community to design a different type of service for that community, because just doesn't seem like fixed route transit works effectively for them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Overton Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening to you, Mr. Ando. It's good to see you again.
Likewise, sir.
And my question, I guess, would somewhat require you to maybe predict the future. I mean, I know you're not clairvoyant, but this question has more to do with funding for the Comet and beyond the penny. I know you mentioned earlier that the lion's share of the funding for the Comet, comes from Richland County. A good bit of that, if not all of it, is from the penny. I am aware that I believe about 300 million or a little over 300 million of the revenue that's from the penny, which is supposed to be, I guess, $1 billion is what it's supposed to generate over the course of 20 some odd years. That these 300 plus million of that is designated just for transportation. So I guess my question for you is, what is the financial outlook, or funding rather outlook, for the penny down the road? Because at some point those funds will be exhausted. So can you just talk a little bit about that? Any concerns you may have, or anything that the county you would like to see from the county in that respect?
Yes, and that's one thing that the Reimagine the Comet is taken into consideration. We've created a long-range financial model where we're looking at, based on all the federal funds we receive, fair revenue, penny funds, miscellaneous funds, and Lexington County funds, how long we can go until we get to basically the end. And we're projecting that we'll run out of penny collection. We'll reach the 300,991,000 by fiscal year 27-28. But we have enough in the reserves since we've been storing revenues to get us through the end of fiscal year 28-29. We do need to update our strategic plan and our vision. Those ended this year. And as part of that process that we'll be discussing with the board is a strategy on approaching both Richland and Lexington counties on how to continue to fund the transit system once the penny does expire. Ultimately, it is going to require the vote of Richland County Council and Lexington County Council if we want to put some type of a transportation sales tax back on the ballot to extend our funding. But we would like to have a strategy in place before we present that to both counties. And I think for a regional transit system, for it to be successful, there's going to have to be a by-county effort in funding the system. So it's not a one county approach like what occurred in 2012.
Any more questions, Ms. Andor? Ms. Andor, I can't tell you how pleased we are with your presentation and what you're doing with the bus system. Thank you very much, and we'll continue to do what we can do on our end to provide the support.
Thank you for your time and your support, and I wish you a great evening.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is item 5A, approval of the minutes for our February 9th meeting. Chair, entertain a motion.
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Motion for approval of the minutes for February 9th. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Any discussion, change, deletions as relates to the minutes for February 9th? If not, I'll ask Ms. Owen to call the roll for the vote.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. McBride?
Yes, there is a correction on page, I think on pages 9 through 10 of the minutes. It indicated that I was present but not voting. And I would like to correct that to indicate that I had technical difficulties and was not able to vote.
Okay, and will you get with the clerk to make sure the clerk has those votes correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. With that change, any further change reference to the minutes? If not, the motion will include that change. It's moved in second. Mrs. Owen can call the roll for the motion to adopt the minutes for February 9th.
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings to item 6 on our agenda, the adoption of the agenda. Chair, entertain a motion for adoption of the agenda.
Move to approve.
It's been moved for adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Mr. Brown, our administrator, do you have any changes?
No, sir, Mr.
Agenda?
Chair. No, sir, Mr. Chair. I've not been notified of any requests for changes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
If not, if my colleagues don't have anything for the agenda, I'll ask Mrs. Owen to call the roll for the motion to adopt the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I have one change. I'm sorry.
You recognize Ms. Mackey.
If we could, just on the notification of vacancies,
Do you have that page?
it is page 518A.
Okay, go ahead.
The airport commission, we removed that as a vacancy.
Okay. Any other changes? If not, with that change, I'll
Mr.
ask.
Chair? I apologize. Just for clarification, I didn't hear correctly. For item 18B for the airport commission, were you saying removed it?
Yes, remove.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Thank you. Ms. Newton, you did hear that, correct?
Yes, I heard it that time. Thank you.
Okay, with that, then I'll ask Mrs. Owen to call the roll for the adoption of the agenda.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 7 on our agenda, report of the acting county attorney for executive session items. Ms. McLean?
There are no executive session items that I see, so I have no report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda, 8, which is citizen input. Item 8A is for items on the agenda not requiring a public hearing. It's only if we have anyone to present anything for that public hearing.
No, sir.
That public hearing is open and now closed. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda, which is citizen input. This is item 9A, must pertain to Richland County matters not on the agenda. Items for a public hearing is required or a public hearing has been scheduled, cannot be addressed at this time. It is only that anyone present anything reference citizen input for this item.
No, sir.
That public hearing is now open and closed. That brings us to item 10 on our agenda, a report of the county administrator, Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir, members of County Council. There are 2 items under the administrator's report. One is the comprehensive annual financial report presentation. I'm going to ask the Director Ham of our finance team to cover that information with you. You should have received a packet containing the CAFR as well as a initial letter associated with that presentation. Followed by that, we're going to have Chief Cowan of the Sheriff's Department give the council an update concerning the 911 call center process that they've been working through. So I'm going to ask Ms. Ham at this time to present that CAFR information to the council. Ms. Ham.
Thank you.
Yes, Stacy Ham, Finance Director. Yes, the packet included the letter that had the letter of governance from the auditors and the internal control letter that was attached inside the CAFR. Some of the highlights in there on page 4 is the MD&A, the Management Discussion and Analysis. That will give a good overview of what all has happened compared to last year and this year, and what is actually kind of explain all the numbers that are in the back of the CAFR. So that's a good analysis to read through. On page 19 and 21 have the funds for the governmental funds, and that will show you the balance sheet that shows the fund balance and the revenue and expenditures for all the governmental funds. And on page 23 and 24, exhibit 7 and 8 are the balance sheets and revenue and expenditures for the proprietary funds, which are the ones that are like a business type funds. And then there's also on page 21, the, oh, wait a minute, note 21, note 21 on page 86 has the breakdown of the fund balance for all the governmental funds, and will show you what our actual fund balance is. It has that our unassigned fund balance should be in the range of 25 to 30%, 20 to 30%, and we are at 27% right now. And that gives you the breakdown of what the other fund balance items are. And then there's on schedule 1, page 87, actually gives you the general fund breakdown for revenue and expenditures for budget to actual. And those are the main highlights. If you have any questions, I can answer them, or if you have any questions after you review all this, the letter that was attached has my email and phone number that I can answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Let me ask my colleagues, are there specific questions at this point? If not, please remember, Ms. Ham said, feel free to follow up with her with any specific questions you might have. So please feel free to do that. Thank you very much. If there are no further questions, then we'll move on. But please, as you get a chance to review the document, feel free to follow up.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We certainly expect going forward to have multiple conversations with this body concerning finances and our budgetary and financial outlook. So we appreciate your attention. And certainly as you get a chance to review that, we'll expect to have some workshops where we'll discuss some other items with you as well. Mr. Chair, now, if I can move on to item B, sir.
Yes.
Okay, item B, there's a report that's going to come to you from the Richland County Sheriff's Department. I believe Chief Chris Cowan is on the line. He's going to give the council an update concerning the 911 call center. And Chief, if you could, just for the members of the council who may not have been on the council during the time that the county originally moved forward with this discussion, could you just give the council a brief overview of what the 911 consolidation is as you talk about the update, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, members of council, Mr. Chair. So over the course of the last 5 years, the sheriff and council have been working on reconsolidating 911 communications back under the auspices of Richland County, having Sheriff Lott have the managerial responsibilities for that. Actually, 2 years ago, almost to the day, we came before council and spoke specifically about the consolidation and what we believe that needed to look like. And we've been working very effectively with Director Byrd, with the city police department, city police department, fire department, emergency management division, administration. And basically where we are today is a culmination of all of that work and making sure that we are consolidated and cooperative. And what that simply means is that we have established an executive committee that is overseeing communications, and that is made up of Sheriff Lott, Chief Holbrook, Chief Jenkins, Director Tinsley of EMD from the city, Director Byrd from the county EMD. And that consolidation is taking place effective March the 1st. And what is happening is that beginning March the 1st of this year, the sheriff will assume managerial responsibilities for 911 communications for the city and the county. Mr. Byrd will continue to support and work with us in the financial aspects of it, as well as the operational aspects of it. But this has been a long, ongoing process. We've also established a strategic planning working group that is made up of both city and county professionals to make sure that as we progress forward, that we're taking into account, first and foremost, the employees of the current 911 center, as well as the citizens of both Richland County and the city of Columbia. So the consolidation, basically what that means is that it's been consolidated since 1999 under the city's responsibility. Now that consolidation will come back under the auspices of Richland County and under the managerial authority of Sheriff Lott.
You ready for some questions, Mr. Cowan? Are you through?
Yes, sir. If there are any questions, I'm happy to field those.
Any questions on Mr. Cowan in terms of where we are with 911 and or regarding the history? Ms. Barron, you recognize.
Good evening, Mr. Cowan. Thank you for the update. So when we look at consolidating this in the past, it looks like the roles are being reversed now. So with the roles being reversed, are we looking to, how is this going, I guess I need to ask this question this way. How is this going to impact us financially when it comes to the Sheriff's Department in Richland County specifically?
There's going to be a lot of moving parts as we go forward. We're very early in the game. And not that it's a game, forgive the expression, sure, but in this process, there's a lot of things that we need to consider and that we need to take into account. And then we need to present back to council the options. What are the plans going forward? What are the options? What are the best case scenarios? We've been working very closely with Dwight Hanna. Dwight Hanna's been working very closely with Pam Benjamin at the city and making sure that we're taking into account all of the personnel components, whether that's the liability with retirement, whether that's time off, whether that's where people are in their retirement. And basically there's a lot of moving parts that have to be put together to make those assessments so that we can present back to council and say, these are going to be the impacts. What we've done is we've kind of carved the pie out into three categories: personnel, capital and resources. Currently, the county is paying for all of the resources. And currently, out of that first piece of the pie that I mentioned, we're paying for a large portion of the personnel. So there's expenses that are already in the budget, already on the books, that are already impacting the county and county council. But as we move forward, we have to look at it in three separate pieces of the pie to make sure that we present to you and articulate to you what the best path we think is going forward, but then also getting your input to make sure that it's impacting the county in a positive way.
So as a follow-up, Mr. Chair, if I may, we are definitely in the early stages and we're finalizing this. I just want to reiterate what you said, finalizing the plan. And as we finalize our plan, then you'll come back to us. But it does appear we are inheriting some new personnel and things of that nature that we're working through. That's correct?
We are working through that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have Mr. Overture Walker and then Ms. English.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening to you, Chief.
Hey, sir.
It's good to see you again.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Barron, in her question, she touched on the financial piece to this, but I want you to talk a little bit about, I guess, the service piece of it. And what I mean by that is, could you tell me or explain to the council, why this proposal, this call center agreement would be more efficient in terms of delivery of emergency services than, say, the status quo?
One of the biggest changes has been the creation of the executive committee, whereby the executives from the agencies that this center is utilizing this center, they are getting together on a monthly basis and they are talking about the operational capacity and capabilities of the center and working through collectively how we better operate, whether it's from an IT standpoint, whether it's from a personnel standpoint, or whether it's from a resource standpoint. We have to be planning for 2030. And the sheriff has said, has basically laid out the gauntlet to us and said, look, I want to be looking at what the next evolution of communications is. I no longer want to be utilizing technology that is from 2015 or 2016. I want to be utilizing and looking for technology that's going forward, that's going to make us more efficient and more effective. Whether that's, the texting to 911, whether that is the services that we provide to the citizens and how they access 911. But we have to make sure that we're being as efficient and effective as we possibly can. So to answer your question in three ways, number one, the executive committee coming together on a monthly basis and communicating about how the operations of the center can improve. Number two, the sheriff has brought in an absolute rock star to take over communications as the director of communications, and that is Stephanie Snowden. And many of you know her. She worked at the county for many, many years. She was a city manager at Lake City. She is a collaborator and a team builder, and she will be one of the individuals that helps the executive committee and the team that is presently at 911 to take the center to a whole new level of capabilities. And number three, over the last several years that we have been working through this process, we have been researching this industry standards. And what are other agencies, what are other counties, what are other cities, our size and bigger, what are they doing to make themselves more fiscally responsible? What are they doing to make themselves more effective and efficient going forward? And we've been looking at the standard operating procedures. How do we continue things that are working? How do we look at other people that have, other agencies around the country that have made mistakes, and how do we prevent that from happening? So those are the three ways, in my humble opinion, that as we go through this process, we'll make this collaborative 911 more effective for the citizens who need the services. And we have to make sure that we're reaching the citizens in the best way we can.
Thank you. You through, Mr. Walker? Ms. English?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But again, Councilwoman Barron and Walker pretty much asked my question, and thank you, Mr. Cowan, because my question was exactly the same. The experiences that are going to, the exercises that we're going to address the various possibilities in effectiveness. And you already answered that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey, you're recognized.
Thank you. Hi, Chief. Can
ma'am.
you explain now with this change or this proposed change with this new structure, will residents experience anything different when using the 911 system? Will it still be the same for them on the outside? This is just an internal shift?
This is a managerial shift, yes, ma'am. So presently, the citizens will not see any change to their 911 service. As we continue to collaborate and work together through the processes, there may be more efficiencies that occur as a result of the Sheriff's Department, and the Police Department, and the Fire Department, and the Executive Committee and the Strategic Planning Committee all collectively working together on ways that we can continue to build on what the center has been successful at. So to answer your question, citizens won't see any glitches in the system. This is a management of actually additional support going into the center and looking at training, looking at operations, looking at how we continue to work together to improve. So if anything, it's a positive, because again, it's collaborative. It's everybody has an equal voice in it and how we continue to be better. So they won't see any changes, no ma'am. And when when eventually we get to the point to where we do move to a up to date, larger facility, there won't be any drop in service. There won't be any lag in service. There will only be improvements going forward.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. McBride?
Yes, Chief Cowan, I want to thank you for all the work you've done on this initiative. I know that there are other issues. Do you have a time frame right now in terms of when you would like completion, including moving into a facility? Or you're not at that point yet?
Yesterday would be great. Listen, we've got to do this right. We've got to make sure that we're doing it methodically and very, very specifically with what's going to work best for county council, for city council, for the citizens, for the present employees. So we really need to be very meticulous in what we do. So no, ma'am, we can't give you a timeline, but we need to, the present center is over there. They've outgrown the present space that they're in. It is not the ideal environment for them, and it hasn't been and they've been working to try to figure out ways to solve that. So to answer your question directly, no, ma'am, we don't have a timeline because there are things that we have to do it's a really huge step for March 1st and for that to occur. And then there's other steps that we've got to go through, and we've got to come back. We got to keep coming back to council to keep you guys in the loop on what we're doing, to get your input and to get your suggestions and your concerns. And so we're hoping that will start. But this was important for us to do tonight because it has been 2 years almost to the day where we came before you to really talk about catapulting this forward. And we need to move rapidly because technology is going to get ahead of us if we don't move quickly.
Okay. And the final question is, are there main issues that you would like the council to start looking at or begin thinking about?
The biggest thing is that we're going to have to eat those 3 pieces of the pie. We're going to have to continue to make sure that we're supporting the personnel that are presently there, making sure that we continue to support the resources that are needed to have an up-to-date, top-of-the-line 911 center for all citizens of Richland County, whether they're in Eastover and Ballantyne, it doesn't matter where they are. We've got to make sure that we're providing services. So keeping that on your radar, and as we come back to you with potential problems and potential solutions, that you help us identify those and put them into place very, very quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Calvin, thank you very, very much. And tell the sheriff hello for us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, council.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I was getting ready to wrap up, but I see that Mr. Walker had his hand up, sir.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Mr. Walker.
I was waving at Chief Cowan.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I finally learned how to utilize the reaction on reaction feature on Zoom. So I was just literally waving at him. That's all.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, as we wrap that up, there was several questions there that, and Chief Cowan did ask that council consider those pieces of the pie. I would agree with that in the sense that one of those areas that that have not been fully identified and fleshed out and is currently in the process is, how we work with the city as one of those partners related to the personnel. So that is a big piece, as the Chief brought up, and that is one of those big areas. So that will be one of the decision points that will have to come before this body as it relates to how we are going to handle that piece. And that will be a decision that is made by the county council. So as we wrap up this particular part of the presentation, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. And that concludes my report under the administrator's report.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 11 on our agenda, the report of the interim clerk of council, Ms. Only.
Yes, sir. The clerk's office doesn't have a report.
That brings us to item 12, the report of the chair. The chair does not have a report this evening. That brings us to item 13, open and close public hearings. 13A, authorize execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes and incentive agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and Project Cross to provide for payment of a fee in lieu of taxes, authorizing certain infrastructure credits and other related matters. That public hearing is now open. Ms. Only, did anyone sign up to speak to the public hearing?
No, sir.
No one signed up to speak to that public hearing. It is now closed. That brings us to item 14 on our agenda, which is the approval of consent items. We have one consent item, item 14A, 20-037 MA, Brian K. Smith, HI to GC, Farrell Road and Clemson Road, tax map number R17400-04-04. That item's up for third reading. Chair entertain a motion regarding item 14A.
Move to approve.
Motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a move and properly second. In discussion. There being none, Ms. Only, can you call the roll for item 14A?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Yes.
McBride, Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Joe Walker, Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings to item 15 on your agenda, which is third reading items. We have one third reading item, which is item 15A, authorize execution and delivery of a fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes and incentive agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and Project Cross to provide for payment of a fee in lieu of taxes, authorizing certain infrastructure credit and other related matters. Chair entertain a motion for item 15A.
So move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and properly second. Any discussion reference item 15A? Mr. Malinowski, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On page 60 of our agenda, normally we have dates in here for the different readings. This shows it to be a second reading item that we're on, but there's no date for first reading. So I'd like someone to provide that. Doesn't have to be tonight, but until I can go back and look at when that was at my notes, I won't vote yes on it.
Please, and make sure that this only that's noted in the minutes. Any further discussion reference item 15A? If not, I'll ask Ms. Owen Colorado.
Malinowski,
No.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton, Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 16 on our agenda, second reading items. We have two second reading items. The first one is item 16A, authorizing expansion of the boundaries of I-77 Core Regional Industrial Park jointly developed with Fairfield County to include certain properties located in Richland County, the execution and delivery of an infrastructure credit agreement to provide for infrastructure credits to Project Centrum and other related matters. The chair entertains a motion for item 16A. It's moved for approval. It's a second.
Second.
It's moving properly second. Any discussion reference item 16A?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Mallon, you recognize.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And I jumped ahead on here. That third reading item, I was a yes on that one, and this is the one that I don't have that info. I'll have to vote no on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion reference item 16A? If not, I'll ask Ms. Owens to call the roll for the motion for item 16A.
Malinowski,
No.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Yes.
Newton, Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 16B, authorizing the first amendment to the master agreement governing the Forest Acres Business Park between Richland County and Fairfield County, authorizing the first amendment to intergovernmental agreement between Richland County and Forest Acres and other related matters. Chair, entertain a motion for item
Move to approve.
16B. Motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
It's moving properly second for item 16B in discussion. There being none, I'll ask Ms. Owens to call the roll for the motion for item 16B.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 17 on our agenda, and that is a report of Economic Development Committee. The Honorable McBride.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Economic Development Committee has two items for action, and the first one, 17A, authorizing the execution and delivery of an assignment by Tyson Prepared Foods, Inc., which will be referenced TPF, of a 2017 fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and TPF to Project Charlie. The execution and delivery of an assignment by, I'm sorry, I can't see that well, TPF to Charlie of 1966 fee in lieu of taxes agreement in the form of a lease agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and TPF. The execution and delivery of an amendment to the 2017 fee in lieu of ad valorem taxes agreement by and between Richland County, South Carolina, and TPF and other related matters. Mr. Chair, additional information is on pages 94 through 108. This is a first reading for Project Charlie, a company that is contemplating a 54.2 million investment that would create 330 jobs at an average hourly rate of $18.62 an hour.
And what is the committee's recommendation?
For approval.
You've heard the committee's recommendations for approval. Discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Malinowski and then Mr. Horatio.
Thank you.
Mr. Horatio, you can go first.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. I just want to say thank you to the chair of the Economic Development Committee for sharing the information about the investment, the jobs, and the rate of pay for those jobs. That really helps me, even though we can't, we're not sharing a lot of information about this this project, I believe it's very helpful to the citizens to know some of these details. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Malinowski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question that I had, and that was when Tyson Food had their fee in lieu of agreement. It says it was dated, I guess, October of 2017. Was that a 10-year agreement? I wasn't able to find that in here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, I was
Can I
asked to
answer
say
that
Mr. Rubel.
To Mr. Rubel, thank you.
Mr. Malinowski, that was a 20-year agreement. And what we offered was to extend the investment period, which was a 5-year period. We agreed to extend that so that the company could contribute additional investment into the window.
Okay, so they have not, the original company has not invested their $9 million at this point in time yet, right?
The original company, I think they actually did achieve their goals, but that's a moot issue because the original entity had closed office. Now the assignment, we would assume the new investment would go toward that company's investment obligation.
Okay, and can you explain to me this investment period, the way it's written here? It says, for purposes of this agreement, the investment period is expected to end. And then parenthetically, it says, unless the commencement date is later than December 31st, 2017. Didn't we know the commencement date on this? I'm not understanding why we're putting a question mark in here from 4 years ago or three years ago.
You know what, Mr. Malinowski, can I do this? Can I come back to you on that? I'm gonna have to talk to our attorneys.
You sure can.
I don't have them present at the time, but I'll if it's okay, I'll come back to you on second reading.
Fine, thanks, Mr. Rubel.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
If not, Ms. Owen, can you call for the vote for the committee's recommendation for item 17A?
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Mr. McBride, you may continue.
Mr. Chair, 17B, the Economic Development Committee recommends approving the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions for the Blythewood Business Park and other related matters. You can find that on page 109 to 131.
You heard committee. I'm sorry.
I would just wanted to add that as part of the development of the Blythewood Business Park, we are proposing a set of covenants and restrictions that will guide the growth in the park, assuring all construction would align with the county and the community's expectation for a Class A development. Recommend approval.
You heard the committee's recommendation. Any discussion? Mr. Malinowski, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fact that this is showing is written as a resolution, that means it's one reading and we're not coming back for any more.
Mr. Ruby, you want to explain what why this is?
Yes, sir. It is a resolution. Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Chair, just having received this prior to the weekend and seeing 20-some plus pages in here, and I've read through it all, and I've got some questions on probably 8 or 9 of these pages, and I don't want to delay this meeting tonight, but certainly it seems that there are a lot of items relating to the rules. They contain words such as unless approved by the Design Review Committee. Well, this seems to leave the door wide open for many exceptions, for some to the exclusion of others, since it's not a hard and fast item that's It's in the rules. There are other things in here that relate to tree removal, but it doesn't talk about the potential of tree replacement in here. And there are several items in here that I would like that appear to be loopholes somewhat for some individuals if they would like to avail themselves of it. I would like to be able to have the opportunity to send my questions to Mr. Rubel or whoever else I'd be directed to and have this brought back at the next meeting.
Mr. Rubel, is there a problem for this to be brought back at the next meeting?
No, sir, no problem at all.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Newton?
In that case, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to defer to the next meeting so that.
I was giving Ms. Newton a chance because she had a hand up, see if she wanted to speak. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. No, Mr. Malinowski covered it, so I will second his motion to defer until the next meeting.
Thank you.
It's been moved and properly second for deferral. The deferral is non-debatable. Mrs. Owen, can you call the roll for the motion for deferral for item 17B?
Yes, sir. Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And I'll ask my colleagues to review that again and make sure if you have any particular questions, try to get them to Mr. Rubel or Mr. Brown prior to our next meeting.
Also, Mr. Chair, if we could make sure that we receive some information on the pages called Exhibit A and Exhibit B rather than just blank.
And include Exhibit A and B. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. McBride, you recognize.
This concludes the report of the Economic Development Committee, but I would like to thank the committee members, Mr. Overture Walker, Joe Walker, and I also would like to thank all of our colleagues, council members that have been participating in the discussions and attending the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item 18, report of Rules and Apartment Committee. The Honorable Bill Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 18A, notification of vacancies 1A through 1U as in uniform, with the exception of 1B. It's recommended to advertise or re-advertise, whichever the case may be.
You heard the committee's recommendation of re-advertising, and which one you were removing?
It was 1B. That's the one Miss Mackey already told you about.
That's right. You mentioned that earlier. You heard the committee's recommendation for re-advertising the vacancies from 18 1A through U, with the exception of B. Ms. Newton, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is probably more for the clerk to council, which is after these vacancies are advertised, what will be the deadline for citizens to apply?
March 5th.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Horatio, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could we just, I don't know if there was an explanation about why that notification for the Airport Commission was removed.
Yeah, there is, Mr. Horatio, and that is that Mr. Eversman, who's in charge out there, said that we filled 2 of the vacancies and the other vacancy is not really a vacancy. We don't need to do anything with it.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
If not, committee's recommendation, the moving properly. Well, I'm sorry, that's committee's recommendation. I'll ask them to call the roll for the vote.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number, or letter B, the notification of appointments for the Lexington Richland Alcohol and Drug Abuse Council. There are 2 vacancies. After interviewing all 4 of the applicants, the committee recommends to appoint Mr. Harold C. Ward and Ms. Michelle Drayton.
You heard committee's recommendation. Any discussion? Mr. Ray, shows your hand up.
I'm sorry, I hadn't lowered it from before.
Any discussion reference to committee's recommendation?
Mr. Chair, just a clarification on that, Mr. Malinowski, the names.
The names again, in your agenda on page 6, it would be letter B1A, Harold C. Ward, and on page 7, it would be letter D, right above the 2, Michelle Drayton.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Malinowski, are any of those individuals incumbents?
No, sir.
Are any of the ones that are not being considered incumbents?
No, sir.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, I'll ask Ms. Only to call the roll for the committee's recommendation for item B1.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Mr. Malinowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under item 2, Midlands Workforce Development Board, there were 2 vacancies from the private sector, 2 applicants, Maranta White and Sheena Thompson, and the committee recommends to appoint both of those individuals. And for the benefit of new individuals on council, this particular board normally will recommend individuals to the council that they believe will work the best for them. And those are the people that interview. It's not to say anybody else cannot apply, but in this case, that's what happened. The individuals recommended applied, were interviewed, and the committee recommends to appoint them both.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the committee's recommendation? If not, I'll ask Ms. Owen to call the roll for item 18.2.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
brings us to item 18. I'm sorry, 19 on our agenda, and 19A is a motion. I think it was from a colleague. It says move to remit the $300,000 private donation negotiated by Councilwoman Delia Myers and Councilman Chip Jackson, earmarked for the Taylor's community to Richland County Park and Recreation on the IGA to be designated as funding for the Taylor's Community Park, promised and fully funded as part of the economic development plan for the Korean community on Shop Road before December 31st, 2020. These funds were donated beginning in 2017 prior to the construction of the 22,000 bed new green community, which is now completed. Our Richland County staff has not begun planning, our Recreation Commission, I think, I'm sorry, planning for the construction on a fully park. I'm gonna ask I think Mr. Brown and someone from the staff would probably have some information regarding this. Mr. Brown, I'm gonna ask you to just simply kind of bring us up to date on this based on whatever you all have.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. In your agenda packet, there's actually some meeting notes that reference The last conversation that was kind of had on this item back in the A&F committee in November 19th. But the last time we checked in on this item, what we did was we were able to identify some language that was in the economic development agreement that talked about where the funds came from. And in terms of what was happening with the park, there had been discussions had begun with the Richland County Recreation Commission. And the last place we left off was that's where that item rests, that there were discussions with the Rec Commission as to looking into whether or not this would be something they could take on and how that would look. And our partners with Community Planning and Development Department have been working with the Rec Commission to review that. And so at this point, Mr. Chair, I believe that's where we are. And certainly, if you would like additional information on that, I do have members of that team on this call as well.
Thank you. Let me first of all, I have a couple questions. Let me ask my colleagues. Do my colleagues have any questions this morning?
Mr. Chair, I have a few questions, but I can wait until after you ask yours.
My concern is I'm not clear on the relationship or any commitments on behalf of the Recreation Commission in terms of what, have they made any commitments with this? Have there been any agreements with this? I'm not clear on the communication that occurred between the Recreation Commission and staff.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and if I could either have Ms. Powell or Mr. Voyner, who I know had some initial conversations, again, just kind of around, whether or not this is something that the commission would be able to take on. There were some initial conversations, but there have been no commitments by that entity to move forward with the development of any park in this area.
Mr. Brown.
Go ahead, Mr. Warren.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. All the information about discussions with the Recreation Commission about this particular park are included in the agenda packet. There have been additional conversations with the Recreation Commission about the Atlas Road Park, which is not pursuant to this particular agenda item.
Mr. Administrator, if I may.
Yeah, Ms. Marisburg, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Lindsay, members of council. Per my notes, the last direction that the council delivered was that the county attorney's office was to advise you all on what steps needed to be taken to deliver the park or the funds to the Taylor's community.
Thank you. Ms. Nick, you may go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll wait until legal addresses that question, as it might answer what I was going to ask.
Okay.
The last involvement legal had on this was we drafted an intergovernmental agreement with the Rec Commission. We have had no involvement in this process from the very beginning. So that intergovernmental agreement was based on the comments we got from Ms. Powell and Mr. Voyner. I presented that to them. I will say at the time, we were not in any way in agreement with the Rec Commission about how this might go down. Mr. Voyner sent to me a draft the Rec Commission had presented to the county sometime back that we had not seen, that basically was a master agreement for all parks that the Rec Commission would take over on behalf of the county, and each park would then be a part of that master agreement in some way. Legal has never seen that. Legal was not involved in any of the discussions about this $300,000 in the park. Obviously we can go any direction you want of this. If the council would like the county to own this park, build the park and then hand it to rec commission, that's something that would have to be negotiated. I don't, based on the agreement they sent, it doesn't seem likely, but that is certainly a path we could try. The other options would be give the money to the rec commission and with an agreement saying what they have to spend it on, a park in that area with whatever requirements you want. But again, I don't think any of this has been negotiated or attempted to be negotiated with the rec commission for some time.
Thank you. Ms. Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this will be for staff. First, want to check my understanding. So my understanding of the clear parts of this process is that it was negotiated that $300,000 would be provided for recreation for this community, number one. That effective December 2020, all $300,000 has been paid to the county. And finally, so it was negotiated for recreation, the funds have been paid, and that as it relates to Richland County Recreation Commission, RCRC, as of this point, has not agreed to accept responsibility for the park. Are all of those items correct?
To the best of my knowledge, Ms. Newton, I would say yes, but again, we do have other members of staff that's more closely associated, maybe the answer, but I believe the answer to that question is yes.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Yes, please, Ms. Powell.
The answer to that question is yes, but I would add that we are not aware of any council motion that directs the funds to be used for a park.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. That was going to be my next question. If there was, apart from legal, if there was a council directive. So I certainly see that my colleague, Ms. Barron, has her hands raised. So I don't want to interfere with that. But from my perspective, I guess I'm wondering for staff, if what would be appropriate would be a motion that gives staff a clear direction. And so from my perspective, there's so many details of this that are unclear. It would be along the lines of directing administration and legal to come to council with a plan for how these funds might be used for recreation for this community. And that would hopefully give administration and legal the latitude to recommend any among several options, whether Richland County builds the park, a park, or something else, whether we collaborate with Richland County Recreation Commission or some other agreement, but that the direction, again, to both administration and staff be to come back to us with recommendations as to how these funds that were contributed for recreation for the community might be used to that purpose. So those are the lines along which I'm thinking, but certainly I'll defer to my colleagues for their questions and comments before I make a motion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Barron?
Thank you, sir. Directly connected to Ms. Newton. I think when I read through the packet, it does clearly state that these funds are for recreation. It does not state that it has to go through Richland County Parks and Recreation. And I'm concerned if they've not responded at this point, then perhaps we could be, for lack of better terms, dumping a project in their lap that they're not willing to manage. And I would be very concerned about that. Just having several parks within my district and having conversations with Parks and Recs at this point, I would like for us to do our due diligence in instructing Mr. Brown and his staff and legal to be able to explore creative options that may be minus Parks and Recreation.
It's sorry, Ms. Barron, you through?
Yes, I'm finished, sir.
I think one thing that's somewhat clear to me, and that is that the funding was designated for a particular area. And obviously, Richland County is not directly responsible for recreation. And I thought I read somewhere where the staff suggested that we consider establishing an MOU with recreation, which would make sense to me, and even let them even decide what is the best even type of recreation for that area, for that amount of money. Because I have no idea what $300,000 will buy in terms of recreation and so forth. So I'd much rather we consider establishing some kind of MOU with recreation, if they're willing to do so, and let them decide what's most appropriate for that neighborhood, what's the best recreational type thing, and even the specific location in that particular neighborhood. It would make sense to me because that's what they do. When I say them, I'm talking recreation. Ms. McBride?
Yeah, it appears that we're, and I need to get this clear, under legal obligations to use the $3,000 for some type of recreational program for the Taylor community. Is that not correct? Ms. McLean?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
I would say it appears that we would be under some type of legal obligation to provide the $300,000 for a recreational activity or program within the Taylor community based on the donation.
It's a possibility. I honestly don't know exactly how the donation went down. We weren't really involved in that either. So if there was any signed documentation that would make a difference, I don't know what our representations to the developer were. It appears that it was for some sort of recreational facility in that area, but I honestly can't answer that totally. I can say that it appears from what I'm told that yes, we have some sort of requirement to either do some of that money for that purpose or give it back. I'm not totally sure I can answer that without some more information.
Okay, thank you. The second response is, I agree with Councilwoman Barron. I'm concerned regarding giving the money to Parks and Recreation without some real details in terms of how it will be used by them. But I still have issues in maybe their concern and maybe their interest, and also some other issues around the Department of Recreation. So I agree with Ms. Barron. I do have concerns about working with them, but it's possible that we could work through those issues, being very specific on different items within the agreement.
I have Ms. Malnouster, then Ms. Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. McLean answered part of what I was going to comment on, and that is that if we cannot come to some type of agreement with the Recreation Commission, or we in Richland County do not want to begin getting into the park business, my question was going to be, maybe why can't we give the dollars back if that's the case? Because one of the things that was pointed out by staff is that additional costs for recurring maintenance to any park built are going to occur. And we need to take that into consideration. It's fine for somebody to give you money and say, here you go, build it. But then we're responsible as the budgets begin to increase over the next several years for maintenance and upkeep and staffing of those parks. So I think that also needs to be taken into consideration, and possibly giving the money back is an option we may want to consider. Like you, Ms. McBride, I also agree with Ms. Barron. Thank you.
Ms. Newton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll just say, certainly, I would love for legal to review any documentation and come back with their opinion. I did call Will Johnson, the attorney at Haynesworth Sinclair Boyd, who represented the developer in this project, to ask some clarifying questions. And so my understanding as an individual is that those funds were clearly donated for the purpose of recreation in this community. And so just to clarify, because I'm in agreement with many of my colleagues here, what I was suggesting as a possible motion in terms of directing staff administration and legal to come back with a plan, is that it could include any number of those things and looking at options, because at this point, my impression is that the Recreation Commission has not expressed an overwhelming desire to manage this project. Like Mr. Livingston, I certainly agree that they are the experts in parks. I was thinking of a motion, pardon me, that would allow staff and administration the latitude to come to us and say, we think we should work with Parks and Recreation. They want to, they don't want to. Barring that, we think Richland County should or should not, or Richland County returning the money could also potentially be an option, but just that they evaluate what the intent was to designate dollars for recreation and come back to us with all of our options. And certainly, even if the Recreation Commission isn't interested in managing this park as a millage agency and partner of Richland County, I would certainly hope that they would lend their expertise in terms of recommendations to administration, which would allow them to come to us with fulsome recommendations in either direction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. McBride?
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I think that the need probably for the Community Development Center in the Taylor's community has been identified. And I know that we don't have recreational facilities in many of our areas where it's needed. So I would hate to see us not do something to address an issue that was identified as a need. I also think that we have, and Ms. Ashley Powell might be able to help, we have a lot of expertise on our staff. And I know that we're not in the business of developing recreational parks, but there are probably other options in terms of us negotiating how this can be done, because we have staff that have expertise in a number of areas based on the departments that they're working in too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized?
Ms. Powell, please. Yes.
Ms. McBride, certainly staff is willing and able to look at an array of options and come back to the council with some to choose from. Our point of stagnation thus far has just been that there has not been a clear motion from the council in full, the policymaking body, around what these dollars are to be used for. So if there were a motion tonight directing us to do that, that's absolutely something that staff is capable of doing.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. And I knew that you all had that capability.
I have Ms. Barron and then Ms. Newton, and I hope one of them have a motion. Go ahead, Ms. Barron.
I'm sure my colleague, Ms. Newton, has a motion that I'm ready to second. But I just want to go back to the point and not to belabor the hour. Sure that Parks and Recs are a millage agent, an agency of ours. However, if they would like to serve in the capacity of just giving us guidance on the best way of using these dollars, I would encourage us to use them and their expertise to do that. Then also looking at non-traditional ways of how we can still serve this community with the funds that have been given to us through some of our nonprofit organizations or other partner organizations within our community, because based on what I read, it is about bringing recreation to that community. The method is not clear. And I think that's the guidance that staff can definitely give us, is the best method that we can bring this recreation to the community. So I just want to encourage staff to be real creative in our approach, because even though I do believe if we can't live up to our end of the deal, then yes, we need to give back the money. But I do believe that there is a way that we can do what we need to do and do it in excellence and still get the job done, and so that the community has those resources that they need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Newton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am prepared to make a motion. I just have a quick question for staff first. As part of my motion, I would like to provide some sort of time frame during which staff is going to come back to us with these plans. Can you give me an idea of what a reasonable time frame would be?
I would say,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Mr.
No, go ahead, Ms. Powell. I'm sorry. Go ahead, ma'am.
I was simply going to say that that would be dependent largely on Recreation Commission's schedule, because we would need to speak with them specifically. Ms. Watson has been more than responsive in helping us with our park planning and recreation planning, but I would want to find some time to meet with the experts before we bring back some estimates of costs and recreation activities to the body. If I was pressed to give an estimate at this point, I would say that we could bring something back in 60 to 90 days.
Thank you.
I'm in agreement with that, Ms. Newton.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Newton, you should have the floor.
thank you. I move that we designate the $300,000 donated by RAIN for recreation in the Taylors community, and that we direct staff and legal to collaborate with Richland County Recreation Commission to present a plan to use those dollars for recreation in Taylors, and that they provide an update on that plan to us in the next 45 days.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and properly second. Any discussion in reference to the motion?
Mr. Chair.
Miss, who was that? I'm sorry. Mr. Byrne?
Malinowski.
Malinowski, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The staff was just asked the time frame, and we heard the figure 60 to 90 days given, and now the motion drops below the minimum recommendation to 45 days. I'm wondering the reason for that.
May I address that, Mr. Chair?
You may.
My motion was just for an update. What I heard was that the timing of press was 60 to 90 days for a plan. I'm not requesting a plan in 45 days. I'm just requesting an update on where things stand, considering that there's so many moving parts to this. It could be that there's information that we need that could change the direction. So it is simply an update, sir.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Ms. Newton. I just misunderstood that then. And also, I think that, and maybe we don't need to put it in there because the direction could be worst case scenario, we have to return the funds. I guess that would be included in there, correct? Based on what staff tells us.
When they come back, we can make that decision.
Yeah. Okay, I'm fine. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? If not, I'll ask Ms. Owen to call the roll for the motion regarding 19A that was just made by Ms. Newton.
Malinowski,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton,
Yes.
Mackey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to item 20 on our agenda, executive session items. And Ms. McLean, I think we don't have anything for executive session, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Thank you. The next item is motion period. Ms. Owen, unless something came late, I didn't get anything in reference to motion period. Do we have anything?
No, sir.
Move to adjourn.
Next item is adjournment. The motion to adjourn is a second.
Second.
It's moving proper second for adjournment. Ms. Owen, can you call the roll for the motion for adjournment?
Malinowski.
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
McBride,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Horatio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes.
Overture Walker,
A resounding yes.
English,
Yes.
Newton.
As delightful as it's been to spend my birthday with you, yes.
Happy birthday.
That's why we're letting you out so early.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday
To you.
Happy birthday to you.
To you. Day. Miss Newton. Happy birthday to you.
That's why we decided not to keep it at 7 o'clock.
I have a motion to.
You remember that now.
All non-melodious voices.
Mrs. Only, I did get a, that motion did pass, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Again, thank everyone. Meetings is adjourned. Everyone have a great rest of the evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Party at Miss Newton's.
Night.